What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. Welcome to my channel. Week 11 is now upon us. We are past week 10. The first week of November is done, and entering week 11, I actually found it really hard this week to get a top 25 rankings that at least I was super confident in, especially as you go further down the rankings, more towards the top, like maybe the top 15 or so teams. I feel pretty confident in where they're ranked, but beyond that, it definitely is a little bit of a mess to try to figure out who's going to be above who. However, I feel like, at least in my personal opinion, I've done a very good job. You guys will get to see my list here in a second. But before we dive on into that, I got to tell you about all the ways that you can support the channel. The support on the channel has been really great. I want to continue to see support for the channel grow. Subscribe, ring the bell. Best way to help support me is doing that. But another big way is watching the video, which you guys are doing right now. So, hey, hats off to you for doing so. But there are other ways, like, comment, share. Really, anything you do to interact with the channel helps to support it. So thank you guys so much for whatever you may be willing and or able to do. Let's dive on into the top 25. Before we do that, we got to get to the honorable mention board. Couple teams out of the Pac-12 here on this board. You're taking a look there at the USC Trojans, who, hey, one of the big storylines, they have now fired Alex Grinch, the former defensive coordinator, longtime friend of Lincoln Riley. Probably a very hard conversation for him to have. He is gone. We'll see how the defense improves over these last two regular season games. Again, you got Oregon and UCLA on the schedule still, who is the other team that is just sitting outside of the top 25 poll. Again, they ended up losing to the Arizona Wildcats this past week, and UCLA has been kind of one of those teams that's fluctuated in and out of the poll. Probably will continue to do so over these last 3 weeks. Teams out of the ACC, you got Miami, and you could throw NC State's logo on here as well. Heck, you could even throw Clemson's logo, even though I know they're sitting at 5-4 right now. Miami did lose to the NC State Wolfpack. However, my opinion, still a little bit ahead of NC State is Miami. Again, NC State's logo probably should be up here on screen. I apologize to my Wolfpack fans everywhere. The North Carolina Tar Heels are sitting up there as a team that's very close to breaking back in my opinion. So are the Duke Blue Devils. They won a nail-biter against Wake Forest this past weekend. I believe they actually ended up playing that game on Thursday. Got a couple teams out of the Big Ten here when you're taking a look at the Iowa Hawkeyes, a team that continues to struggle offensively, but the defense is playing really well. And then Rutgers, who fought tooth and nail with the Ohio State Buckeyes, even took a lead into the locker room at halftime, but the Buckeyes just proved they were too much for the Scarlet Knights to handle. And then you take a look at the group of 5 teams here. Air Force dropped out of the poll after the loss to Army, and there are a couple group of 5 teams I like a little bit more than Air Force right now. Liberty is one of them, so if I were to go a little bit deeper here in the rankings, Liberty would be above Air Force. They currently sit as one of the only remaining unbeaten teams in the country, and then Toledo is sitting atop the Mid-American Conference right now, playing some really good football. But let's dive on into who actually made my top 25. We'll start here at number 25, a team that was not ranked last week. It's the Fresno State Bulldogs. They have broken back into the rankings. Have they been in my rankings this year? I cannot remember, but Fresno State all year long has been a very good side. They're currently sitting at 8-1, and right now I would favor them over Air Force to get in, or I should say, to come out of the Mountain West championship game as Mountain West champs. The Fresno State's played really good football this year. Of course, I believe that one lone loss has been to the Air Force Falcons, so you could get into the head-to-head debate, but I believe that Fresno State's just a better team than Air Force right now. I think they're playing better football. That's why they're ranked here at number 25. Number 24 is the Kansas State Wildcats. You'll notice I had them at 24 last week, and I did not move. I am not penalizing them for that loss to the Texas Longhorns. Now, was it really pretty in the first half? No. Was it pretty in the overtime period? No. But that second half of play where Kansas State was able to storm back, that is the Kansas State team that I was waiting to see all game long. They were able to storm back, and they almost, again, if a couple of things would have gone their way, if a couple of mental mistakes were cleaned up there, Kansas State could have walked out of there with a win. And who knows if they make that field goal earlier to tie it up at 30 instead of having to make it with a couple seconds left on the clock there. Who knows? Kansas State may have gotten that extra possession to drive down and win the game with that field goal. Not the way it played out. They ended up dropping the game to the Texas Longhorns, and the Longhorns keep their playoff hopes alive. But I still like the Wildcats as a team. I still really like them, and I still believe they deserve to be ranked here. However, I am not moving them. There are teams I like a little bit more, are teams that jump them, are some teams that fell below them as well. So I think 24 a good place for the Wildcats right now. Not going to talk about James Madison long. We know the story with this team. A very, very sad tale that they can't compete for a group of 5 spot. They can't get into a bowl game. They can't even compete for a conference championship. Although I have heard rumblings that maybe some things are going to start to change around that, especially if we don't have enough bowl eligible teams. You could see James Madison get into a bowl game there, but they're one of the very few undefeated teams left in the country, playing some really good football, just beat a very good Georgia State team, and it looks very, very promising for James Madison to finish this year undefeated. However, we've had that conversation with UTSA in the past, and then they lost their last game of the regular season. Gonna hope that doesn't happen with James Madison. We'll see what happens with the Dukes moving forward. Let's talk about the team at number 22 for a second. The Arizona Wildcats are in my rankings for what many people for a long time could say this is the best 3-loss team in the country. Now, I still believe that there is one team that has 2 teams that have 3 losses that are a little bit better than the Arizona Wildcats. At least I would favor them over the Wildcats. But Jedd Fisch has a very, very good program, has a very, very good team. Arizona just went and beat a pretty solid UCLA side as well. They've kept it close there with USC. They've pulled off some really big wins in the past couple of weeks, most notably against the Oregon State Beavers here, and then against the the UCLA Bruins this past week. And again, who knows, if a couple of things would have gone their way, they probably could have beaten the USC Trojans there as well. But really liking the Arizona Wildcats right now, playing some very good football. Jedd Fisch's program is amazing. What a job he has done there with that program. The Wildcats are bowl bound for the first time in, I believe, 6 or 7 years, something like that. They're in the rankings now at number 22. The G5 champion is above them, though. The Tulane Green Wave were the G5 champs from last year, and I do believe that currently, as it stands, with Air Force losing that game, Tulane is the team right now. Tulane is the team to beat to get that group of 5 spot in a college or in a New Year's 6 bowl game. Now, has Tulane played as well as they did last year? No, I think Tajee Spears is a big factor in that. And Tulane has had their struggles this year, absolutely. They definitely struggle with an East Carolina team that's only managed to win 1 game so far this season. But when you take a look at this Tulane Green Wave in and out, over and under, whatever the explanation you really want to use, this is the team that I'm going to measure the group of 5 race based on. I believe they are the front runner right now, especially with the way the Air Force has lost. I think the College Football Playoff Committee is going to look at them as a clear front runner. They're sitting here at number 21. They did drop a spot just because there are a couple other teams that jump them, couple other teams that I end up liking a little bit more at the end of the day. Okay, here's where things start to get really, really messy. You see all 3 teams with a red down arrow next to them. Those are teams that, hey, look, they were in my top 15 last week, and they've all kind of fell down here. You have the Notre Dame Fighting Irish sitting here at number 20, team that I thought very, very highly of, and the Sam Hartman woes continued against the Clemson Tigers. Now, the Notre Dame dropped 20 because they lost to Clemson. No, Clemson's still a very, very solid side. A lot of good playmakers, a lot of negative narratives going on around Clemson right now that hopefully the Tigers have shut down with the win over the Fighting Irish this past week. But there are a couple teams that when I watched them just ended up liking a little bit better. They played a little bit better in their latest performance, and it's why Notre Dame fell that far. Still think it's a very, very solid football team, even though they are sitting with a 3 in that loss column right now. I still believe Notre Dame is a very solid football program. I do believe they have another bye week coming up here before you finish the season against Wake Forest and Stanford. So in all likelihood, probably going to be another 9-win season for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, which, hey, pretty good there in my book. We're talking about the Oklahoma Sooners here at number 19, and man, what a drop-off this team has had over the past couple of weeks. You really started to see it in the game against the UCF Knights. Just not a team that was really playing as well as they could. It's really starting to feel like Oklahoma was playing their best football in that game against Red River. They were playing their best football before their bye week, and ever since then, it's been a real struggle. You almost lost that game to the UCF Knights. You end up losing that game to the Kansas Jayhawks, and then you end up losing this game here to your rival in Bedlam against the Oklahoma State Cowboys. So a lot of questions got to be answered right now for the Oklahoma Sooners. There is not really a tougher test than what they have faced over the past 2 weeks on their schedule. Still some very interesting games, some trap games that Oklahoma can't take lightly. But now, in all likelihood, out of the college football playoff race, maybe out of the New Year's Six bowl game conversation race, we'll see where the playoff committee has them ranked come Tuesday. You got the Kansas Jayhawks sitting here at number 18. Of course, they are ahead of the Oklahoma Sooners because of that head-to-head tiebreaker. And Kansas just went and beat an Iowa State team that was currently one of the 5 teams that had a 4-1 record in the Big 12 Conference. And Kansas, even though they do have the tiebreakers lost to the top 2 teams in the Big 12 right now, that being the Oklahoma State Cowboys and the Texas Longhorns, Kansas, I believe, is still very much alive to get into a Big 12 championship game. This is the Big 12. After all, there is chaos that can and will ensue. But again, Kansas definitely going to need a lot of help. The Big 12 title race kind of right now looking like it's going to be Texas and Oklahoma State. However, Kansas is playing some really good football. I had a lot of people in my comment section after I said Jason Bean was legit that really downplayed that. Do you believe now? Do you believe now? Who knows when Jalen Daniels is going to be able to get back on the field? I think then Kansas can really start to explode and play some really, really good football. Not that Jason Bean is not the answer. He's playing a really good football himself. He's being a really good weapon for them, but it's just a different dynamic when Jalen Daniels is able to play football for that team. Kansas playing really well right now. They've jumped 3 spots to 18. Got a couple teams out of the SEC here. LSU and Missouri are sitting here now. Now, I know. You could take a look at this and say, well, head-to-head mattered when you talked about Kansas and Oklahoma. That's why Kansas is above Oklahoma. They're at least one of the reasons why. The other reason being that Kansas is playing a lot better football than Oklahoma right now. Why is LSU below the Missouri Tigers? And honestly, if I had a ranking system that included ties, which I don't, I would have these 2 teams tied right now. But the fact of the matter is Missouri is a 2-loss team. LSU is a 3-loss team. Now, you could still argue that LSU is a much better team than what the Missouri Tigers are. But honestly, I was very, very impressed with the way that Missouri was able to play against the Georgia Bulldogs and with the LSU Tigers. While the defense had some solid moments, definitely was not what it needed to be. And the offense got smothered by this Alabama defense, especially late in that game. So I do like Missouri just a little bit more right now. The honest truth why Missouri is above LSU, just because I like the Missouri Tigers a little bit more than I like the LSU Tigers right now. Now, at the end of the day, I mean, you take a look at both these 2 teams' schedules moving forward. Missouri plays Tennessee. You end up losing that game. Are you probably going to drop below the LSU Tigers? Yes, in all likelihood. Right now, I just like Missouri a little bit better. I was still, for the majority of the game, very impressed with the way that LSU played against Bama and very impressed with the way that Missouri played against the Georgia Bulldogs. Of course, now we see Alabama and Georgia, probably those 2 teams on a collision course to get into the SEC championship game. But hey, no slight to these 2 teams. They've played some really good football at times throughout the year. They just happen to fall out of the top 15. So LSU at 17, Missouri at 16, and now we head into the top 15 where you see a lot of risers and a lot of teams jumping a whole lot of spots. It starts out here with the Utah Utes jumping up to number 15. You finally saw some offense start to get going there in that past week. Really, really big game for the Utes coming up against the Washington Huskies. They could end their unbeaten run there in that game. We know that Cam Rising is not going to play. Brant Keithy likely at this stage will not be playing either. However, when you take a look at what this Utah Utes team does have, hey, you still have some really good offensive playmakers. You can't take what they have for granted at all. Still really like some of the playmakers that they have. The quarterback situation has been getting better for Utah over these past couple of games. They're starting to play really, really well. You do have some tough games here down the stretch, and it starts with this game against the Washington Huskies. But this is going to be a very, very fascinating, very, very fascinating Utah team to watch down the stretch. But because so many teams above them fell, Utah's broke back in to the top 15. Kind of the same conversation I'm having with Tennessee right now, too. So Tennessee's got a big game against Missouri coming up here this next week. Tennessee was able to win easily their game against the UConn Huskies. So I can't benefit them too much because of the team they played last week being UConn, a team that, look, in all honesty, coming into the year definitely had some lofty expectations, and sure, they've fallen below that. Just on the surface, not a very, very good football team that Tennessee just went and absolutely walloped. But they did jump back in here to the top 15. Joe Milton is starting to come around really well. Tennessee still got a lot of good weapons. Yes, that defense can still improve in certain areas, but I still like Tennessee's team as a whole. They're up here to number 14. All right, this is the team I really want to talk about. The Oklahoma State Cowboys were number 22 for me this past week. Now you're sitting at 7-2. You're sitting at 5-1 in Big 12 play, and they've rocketed up 9 spots. They are the biggest mover in my poll this week. They have rocketed up the rankings, and they are sitting here at number 13. While probably no college football playoff hopes for the Oklahoma State Cowboys, there is a whole lot of hope now for a Big 12 championship as you control your own destiny to get there. And there is not another ranked opponent, at least to my knowledge, left on that slate there for the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Looking like that they may very well go ahead and win out the rest of the way, barring any sort of Big 12 chaos, which, hey, absolutely can happen. This is the Big 12 we're talking about after all, right? But, hey, that quarterback situation's been figured out. Alan Bowman is the guy. He's playing well. That's a Cowboy defense that's really starting to find their rhythm as well, able to hold an explosive Dillon Gabriel and Oklahoma Sooner offense only to 24 points. And I say only 24, even though 24 is a pretty solid number. But, hey, we know that Dillon Gabriel and company can put up much, much, much bigger numbers than that. I really like the way that Oklahoma State's playing football right now. They are looking like the second best team in the Big 12 Conference. I've jumped them 9 spots all the way here to number 13. And I do want to take a moment to apologize to all my Cardinal fans out there. I feel like I've been disrespecting Louisville for a little bit now. And that game there against the Virginia Tech Hokies didn't necessarily start out super pretty. However, they quickly got moving in that first quarter, took a big lead, and never really looked back. Louisville has now taken sole control of second place in the ACC, and it likely will stay that way given what they have on their schedule. Now, are there some landmines that they have to watch out for? Yes, absolutely. Miami being one of those landmines, Kentucky being another one of those landmines. Technically still a team that is still alive in the college football playoff conversation. Are they going to have to win out? Yeah. Are they going to have to be really impressive when they win out? Probably, but Louisville's still a team that's sitting in that conversation. They've risen 6 spots here to number 12. Cardinals still in play for a playoff spot and now solely second place in the ACC. The Oregon State Beavers. Okay, this is where I may get a gripe from some of you, as Oregon State did jump 4 spots back up to number 11. Oregon State does have 2 losses. However, they are two pretty solid sides, right? But when I take a look at what this Oregon State team, when I just take a look at Oregon State here as a team, I still really like the way that they are playing. A lot of very good skill position players. DJU has had a resurgence with this team, and this Beaver defense has been really, really good for the majority of their season. It's just a product of Oregon State being a team that rose 4 spots because there were 4 teams ahead of them that ended up losing and falling below them. So Oregon State for me is up here at number 11, and that's where the Beavers are currently going to reside right now. You do have some very interesting games coming up in the last 2 weeks. Washington and Oregon are your final 2 games. Chance for Oregon State to really cause some college football playoffs, some Pac-12 chaos there with those last 2 games. All right, moving on into the top 10. I think there is no debate at all what the top 10 teams in the nation are. And of course, I think those of you college football fans quite know they're just the 10 really good teams that you haven't seen yet. However, the order in which those teams go definitely is up for debate in some sense. So I have kept the Ole Miss Rebels here at number 10, although it was very, very tempting to jump them up here to number 9 over the Penn State Nittany Lions. I did have the Nittany Lions at 8 this past week, ended up raising Alabama up there to number 8. Oregon and Texas have maintained their spots here at 6 and 7. So let's go through, talk about each of the teams a little bit here. Ole Miss, very, very hard, very, very interesting test there against the Texas A&M Aggies. But the Ole Miss Rebels were able to come away with the win, right? They were able to come away, score with not a whole lot of time left, and they were able to go ahead and win that game and still remain in the college football playoff race. Now, how likely is it that Ole Miss gets into the college football playoff? And we'll see, right? There definitely needs to be some chaos that happens. Definitely needs to be some things that go their way. And they may very well need to get to Atlanta in the SEC championship game. but you're also then going to be relying on Alabama to lose their last two SEC games, which is Kentucky and Auburn, which in all likelihood probably will not happen. I'm sitting Ole Miss here at number 10. I still like them. Lane Kiffin's got a really, really good bunch. Very tough game coming up against the Georgia Bulldogs this week. We'll see what happens there. The Penn State Nittany Lions are sitting here at number 9. Of course, their lone loss on the year is to a top 5 team, one of the only undefeated teams left in the Ohio State Buckeyes. But when you talk about this Penn State team, look, all eyes now are on this game against the Michigan Wolverines in Happy Valley. And if Penn State can win that game, Penn State's still very much a team that sits in college football playoff conversation, because even though they don't necessarily control their own destiny, you're probably going to need, you're definitely going to need Michigan to beat Ohio State there on November 25th. Penn State's a team that a lot of people still really like. It's a team that I still really like, a team I could see getting still in a New Year's Six bowl game and a very, very good chance to get into the college football playoff if some things are able to bounce their way and they can make their way to Indianapolis. But the Alabama Crimson Tide did jump over Penn State, and I was not surprised with the way that Alabama defense played. That is what we've seen from Alabama pretty much all season long from the defensive end. So I'm not really shocked about how the defense of the Alabama Crimson Tide played. What I was genuinely surprised with, and very happily surprised with, if you will, was the play of Jalen Milroe. He was phenomenal in that game. I believe had 4 rushing touchdowns. There were a lot of Alabama fans out there that were screaming at Milroe to do more scrambling, more running, and well, you got your answer there. This Alabama Crimson Tide held strong. The offense did what it needed to do, and for that effort there, for the effort from Jalen Milroe for the Crimson Tide, they did jump over Penn State. Now, was it a combination of Penn State also falling? Yes, and that offense is going to have to get a whole lot better, a whole lot quicker if they're going to want to beat Michigan in Happy Valley this upcoming Saturday. But the Alabama Crimson Tide, I mean, they have pretty much solidified their spot out of the SEC West to get into Atlanta in the SEC championship game. You know who else has pretty much solidified their spot in their conference championship game? That's the Texas Longhorns. With the win over Kansas State, the gutsy, grinded out win where they had to make some really good defensive plays there in overtime to keep Kansas State at bay. Texas is going to keep their ranking here at number 7, and they sit 5-1 in conference. And right now, all eyes, all Big 12 fans are queuing in on this Texas team as the hope to make, or I should say the hope to end the Big 12 championship drought and to get Texas into the college football playoff. That is the focus of the Big 12 conference right now, is Texas getting into the college football playoff. Very much still alive if Texas wins out from here and beats a very good Oklahoma State team. More likely than not, again, Big 12 chaos is going to be Big 12 chaos. At least that's the way that I feel. But right now, Texas, a team that absolutely is getting in the Big 12 championship game in Arlington and AT&T Stadium. We'll see what happens from this point forward. But I think the toughest tests for the Longhorns are behind them. Are a couple trap games you have to watch out for here. But Texas going to stay here at number 7, and Oregon staying here at number 6. Oregon just hung 63 up here against the California Golden Bears. Don't know what more you want me to say about the Oregon Ducks. Probably are looking like the best team out of the Pac-12 right now. You could definitely say Washington, and you'll notice Washington has not been on the list yet, which means they are still ahead of Oregon. Again, very minimal changes here in my top 10. Again, no debate who the top 10 teams are, the order of which you definitely could leave up for some debate. But I still really like the way that Oregon is playing. Big games coming up here. You do have to play the USC Trojans, and you still have the Oregon State Beavers coming on down the line as well. Going to be a very interesting end of the season in the Pac-12 and for the Oregon Ducks, as well for the team that I do sit at number 5 in the Washington Huskies. They are in a midst of a tough stretch right now, as you have to go play Utah this next week, and then you end up going to play the Oregon State Beavers. So Oregon State could cause a ton of Pac-12 chaos if they're able to beat both Washington and Oregon. Hey, that's definitely going to be an interesting thing to watch. But when I look at this Washington team, they finally got out of whatever slump they were in. They struggled against the Arizona State Sun Devils. They struggled against the Stanford Cardinal. They finally got out of that slump and were able to go win that game against USC, probably more convincingly than what the scoreboard is going to tell you. But Washington looked like a really, really good team there. They don't move. However, I still like the 4 teams that are above them a little bit more, and they currently will reside there at number 5. Florida State has not moved from number 4. Took a long while here to get going against Pitt, but they were able to find their rhythm. They were able to pull away at the end, and Florida State sitting here at number 4. I think the reason Florida State is still going to be sitting above Washington, probably will be here this Tuesday when the college football playoff rankings come out, is because of resume. Florida State has a lot of really, really good wins against teams that are sitting 500 or above. Washington has kind of struggled with some teams that are well below 500 and just overall does not have, I believe, the resume that Florida State does. Now, obviously, it takes a huge boost there with that win over the USC Trojans, but that is why Florida State, I believe, is sitting above Washington right now. Top 3 teams in my mind, though, are clear. You have the Ohio State Buckeyes, you have the Georgia Bulldogs, and you have the Michigan Wolverines, to me, in that order when you count them up 3, 2, 1. Now, I am going to talk about Michigan first because I know there are a lot of things surrounding this Michigan program, and I said it last week, but I'm going to say it again here. There are a lot of rumors flying around that Jim Harbaugh is going to be indefinitely suspended, and who knows what else is coming towards this program. That is not my job. It is not my job to say whether or not Michigan deserves to be in the rankings, out of the rankings, whatever have you, because of what is going on. I'm here to rank what I believe are the best 25 football teams, and right now I believe Michigan is the best football team in the country. Even though the resume is not going to tell you the entire story, Michigan has dominated everyone that they've seen. J.J. McCarthy is playing really, really well. This Michigan defense is also playing really, really well. And Michigan, just as a whole, looks like one of the best teams in the country, in my opinion, is the best team. Now, they get their first real good test here against the Penn State Nittany Lions in Happy Valley. And if you lose that game, hey, a lot of questions are going to start flying, whether or not you have Jim Harbaugh on the sideline or not. It's been rumors flying all morning, all afternoon, that Jim Harbaugh may be indefinitely suspended by the NCAA or by the Big Ten Conference. We'll see what happens with that. Again, I'm going to keep a close eye on that story, but that's not my job to decipher what happens to Michigan. Right now, I think they're the best team in the country. That's why they're sitting at number 1. And then you get into the conversation for 2 and 3, right? I think that's a very interesting debate to have because while Georgia, I think, in my opinion, is looking like the better football team right now, there are some things on the Ohio State side that I do want to see get fixed. The offense maybe clicking a little bit better, the offensive line clicking a little bit better, and this run defense showed that it can make some drastic improvements from their win over the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. But Georgia, hey, you finally get the win on the resume you've been looking for. You finally get that big marquee win, as the Missouri Tigers did not make it easy, but they still were able there to put up a good fight, and Georgia was still able to come out with the win. And right now, I just think Georgia, even without Brock Bowers, playing a little bit better football than the Buckeyes are right now. And again, if it comes down to who would I favor on a neutral field, which is often what I use, I would favor the Georgia Bulldogs on a neutral field over the Ohio State Buckeyes right now. But there you go. There are my rankings. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. And hey, as always, remember to play hard, but tailgate harder. See you guys in the next video. Goodbye.